Great. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Loose Heads podcast in association with Talking Rugby Union. I'm Chris Hill and we're entering, I can't believe I'm saying this, the fourth month of these podcasts, which is brilliant to say and brilliant to be a part of. Our latest episode with Alex Lewington is out there and available to listen to right now. And Alex was very passionate and a very proud supporter of the work Loose Heads do and of the foundation, which was great to hear. And obviously it was music to the ears of our co-founders, Dave, Rob and Mark, who once again joined us this afternoon. Guys, how are we?
Very well, thanks.
Good, thanks.
Yeah, I can't believe it's been nearly 4 months since we kicked things off with that John Hardy podcast.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. I think it's been 4 months.
Yeah, and I think since then, I think we can all agree that we've had big name after big name after big name, and that theme continues this afternoon. But I think we may have the guest with the longest name in world rugby join us, and it's fantastic to welcome DTH van der Merwe to the Loose Heads podcast. DTH, welcome along. It's great to have you on today. How have you been keeping?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I've looked forward to being on here, and I've listened to a few of the podcasts, especially when Cruzy was calling me out about my bad singing. So hopefully I can get him back somehow. I just don't know how yet, but we'll lead into it somehow.
Cruzy's been calling out a few people, and Alex Lewington called Cruzy out as well. So there's a bit of competitiveness between you and Loose Heads ambassadors.
Yeah, no, it's good banter to have between the boys. It's good.
Good stuff. And did you enjoy it? I believe it was Canada Day yesterday as well.
Yeah, it was a bit of a strange one. Obviously, Canada Day back home it's huge. You know, we've got the whole city would be packed up with 200,000 people downtown, and bars would be packed. Activities would be going on all morning for the kids, bouncy castles, face painting, all that kind of stuff. But this year, all events was cancelled. The fireworks were cancelled. No bands were playing. There's nothing going on downtown except obviously the social distancing in the bars. So speaking to family members who were there, a few of them went downtown for a bike ride, but it was quite empty. Just the restaurants were quite busy, although they're not allowed to line up. It's all about keeping your distance. So it's a strange one, but probably a good one to miss. I'm still obviously in Scotland at the moment. We all wore our red yesterday to make sure that we felt part of it. But I think it's probably a Canada Day you'll remember, but want to forget for the ages.
Yeah, and you mentioned obviously you're still in Scotland at the moment, DTH, and let's just get sort of the tough question out of the way first, if you don't mind, in terms of obviously you've been in the news recently about sort of your time is coming to an end with Glasgow. I mean, how tough was that first conversation that you had when that news did break to you?
I've been in the business for a long time, obviously in 11 years in the UK, and you don't always get the answers you want, but I think this one was especially tough. Just we feel settled again being in Glasgow, coming back for a second stint. The kids are enormously happy being in the neighbourhood that we are, right at Scotstoun Stadium, schools and the friends. We're connected into the community, and ultimately we wanted to play another season, but that with the regime change at the top, we didn't fit into the plans, and I totally understand their point of view. They want to trying to take care of the grassroots level kids who coming up and get the U20s involved with the Warriors, and we did have probably too many wingers and back three players this season, so you kind of half expected it to come, but at the same time you didn't want to hear it. I just wanted to have I said to Danny Wilson, I just want to have a clear answer. Just give me a straight up, don't say maybe, don't say hang your head on this, but just give it to me straight. Like I can take it and I can move on. I can make plans for something else. So ultimately that's what it was, and it wasn't nice, but you just get back on the horse and start making plans for their next job.
Yeah, and we had Guy Thompson on the podcast as well, DTH, and he spoke about his obviously time coming in to an end at Leicester and how he felt, and he'd be the first to admit that your situation is probably slightly different because of the connection you've had with the fans and the club. And you say there your family is so settled in Glasgow, and you've mentioned numerous times that it is a second home really for you. So is that kind of a sad thing that you may not get the chance? Well, you won't get the chance to say goodbye to the fans and thank them for such the support that you've had over the years.
Yeah, that actually gives me a bit of goosebumps thinking about it, because it's a touchy subject. I think I've made it clear in past interviews over the years with Glasgow, and even the time I spent away from here, that I felt at home here. It's just like a second home for me. And like I said, we're committed in the community. We've got a lot of friends away from rugby, which is great. You obviously have your team support, and they become your family away from home. But also, just to switch off the mind, you have friends away from it now. It's tough. And the amount of messages I've gotten from supporters. Even last night, I had a young, I think 8-year-old little girl email me who's followed kind of she's 10. Sorry, she's followed my kind of career from a youngster, and it's a funny story that the day my wife went into labor with my first child, we were walking in the park to try to kind of speed up the contractions, and we ran into this little girl Ellie, and the next time we saw her, that she came and gave my daughter a little present. And it's stuff like that I see this little girl grow up. She's in the stands everywhere we go in the final and all the away games. They come to all these games, and I see her from a young little girl grow up. And that's, stuff that really touches my heart when they, then reach out and say, thank you for your commitment to the Warriors, and thank you for always, waving at us when they yell out in the stands, because that puts a smile on my face as well. Every time I'm on the field, I know where they sit, they shout my name, and it's a distinct voice I can pick out in the crowd. So it's little things like that I'm gonna miss. And but obviously the biggest thing is just not being able to say bye to the fans, to everyone there. One last game with my teammates, having a beer in the change room afterwards is it's tough to not be able to say goodbye that way.
And no doubt that everyone will speak so fondly of you, DTH, who wears the Glasgow shirt and supports Glasgow, but you probably will have a smile on your face in terms of moving forward, because you remembered so well there. And in terms of moving forward, you've said before, DTH, that you still want to carry on playing for a couple of years, and this is not the end. So you're excited, but potentially what's to come for you?
Yeah, no, it's still massively excited. It's obviously difficult times for everyone in the world right now with COVID, and I guess communicate or contract negotiations hasn't gone as smoothly as I've wanted to, but I still think I've got another 2 years of rugby left in me, and even more maybe after that. Someone even joked the other day, well, is there a fifth World Cup in you? Although I've retired last year, if I play for 2 more years and the body feels good, what's 1 more year? So we'll see. We'll just cross that bridge when we get to it. There's a few exciting plans in the pipeline that I'm trying to sort out at the moment. Can't touch too much onto that, but till it's a signed done deal. But I'm very excited for my future and the kids' future, and sticking with rugby for a little bit longer.
Just to come in there, we've been doing these podcasts throughout lockdown, like Chris was saying before, and one thing that keeps coming up when we touch upon mental health and loose ends is the importance of planning for life after rugby. Has this whole current situation that we find ourselves in made you realise just how important it is to plan for life after rugby?
Oh, it's huge. Not only do I, obviously you think about the incomes we have as rugby players. We're quite lucky in that way that, we earn good money. We play a sport that we love, and, it's a hobby in the beginning of your life, something you enjoy, but then you get to do it as a job. And yeah, the money is quite good. So in that moment in time, you live in at the means that you're provided, I guess. You go on holidays when you want to, you buy or lease these cars that you want to drive, and just fit the mold of, what the stereotypical rugby guy is. And it's not till, that is taken a bit away from you that you start to realize, hey, wait a second, I don't need that full subscription for a TV package that's, the full bundle. I can cut that way. I can do it less. I can, save money here, I save money there. So those things you do, I guess, realize a bit more when you do hear that final news that you don't have a job to go to. No, obviously my situation is unique, that I'm living in Scotland. Who knows where my next move is going to be to? So that's got expenses behind that, but there is still future income for me. But it does make you think about it, and especially I've got my firefighting thing that I can fall back to after rugby. I think for guys who possibly don't have the education, or they haven't gone into a trade or something like that, I think this could really hit hard. And there's a teammate of mine that's going through that at the moment. won't name a name, but he's a young player who has to retire from rugby, had some, a few bad runs of injuries and so on. And now all of a sudden he's, trying to find an apprenticeship on a building site. That's the thing you want to avoid as a youngster. And if I could give any advice to young players out there is, rugby is a good time. We have a lot of fun, but don't switch off. It doesn't last a lifetime. Like it feels like yesterday when I arrived the first time in Glasgow, and it just flashed away. 11 years gone like that. So really, do hit the books, do look into the future, what your other interests are away from rugby, even if it's coaching or refereeing or whatever it might be. Go do those courses and get it done, because when you have that final word from a coach, you can't play anymore, or a doctor or whatever it might be. You have something to fall back onto.
Yeah, you mentioned your firefighting stuff there, DTH, but is construction work going to be another avenue for you? Currently, the people listening to this, DTH is sat in a storage room after working alongside Ryan Wilson on a construction site.
Yeah. You know what? Like my goal has been to finish my rugby career and get involved with the firefighting department and, sticking to that. But I've also this year started coaching, my little micros rugby for my little boy, and I absolutely loved it. So that's an avenue that's kind of opened in the last, I guess, 8 months for me, that I'm like, oh, you know what? I really actually like working with these little kids. I don't know what level I want to go to with that. If, I would have loved to stick, if this was a few years back, just go up every level with him and, kind of see him grow and the kids around him grow. But, and then, like you said, as of recent, I've been working on this job site here with Ryan Wilson. Started off as complete cowboys, just like YouTubing videos, how to take the roof off, videoing, just everything is YouTube, how to undo the radiators, how to unplug, the toilet, get it off. So yeah, we smashed this whole house apart. We took off the roof, took off the whole top level. Just pretty much the outside level, the downstairs level is left. And now the roof is back up. So roof is back up. Today is the final tight seal is coming in of making it waterproof on the outside. And then the roofers will come. We'll leave the professionals to the roofers, but let them do that bit. But, I've loved every minute of it. It's even taken me as far as calling all my mates back home are carpenters, and I've messaged them. I'm like, listen here, I'm coming home this summer for a bit. Do you mind if I jump on board and just, be a laborer and just learn a bit? Because I've absolutely loved it. Ryan's brother-in-law, Steve, is here, and, he's a builder from down in London. So he comes up for 2 weeks at a time. And so we learn a lot from him, but, I'm enjoying the hard work, and it also keeps my mind occupied. I think, like I said earlier, just, the boys have gone back to training in Edinburgh. So, I can help Ryan out by being here the days that he's not here and he's training. So I, trying to help as much as I can on those days to start a bit earlier. And, but at the same time, I'm learning, and it keeps my mind occupied.
Yeah, and as always with these podcasts, DTH, we talk about loose heads first and why the ambassadors got involved. And I mean, some of the stuff you've mentioned there about focusing on life after rugby and sort of what the next step is for the players. Was that one of the main reasons, I can imagine, amongst many, why you decided to become affiliated with the foundation?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the most important things for me in terms of loose heads is life after rugby, but also the side effect of, concussions was a big thing for me. I think I've said before that I've had a few teammates who had to retire because of concussions, and the dark places that they had to go to, suffering from concussions, just sitting in dark rooms. And that's the stuff I want kids to avoid. Like, I don't want people to experience what some of my friends have experienced. And to be honest, this lockdown has been really tough for myself. Like, I've had to really, take moments to myself and just think about where I want to go and what I want to do. And even though I feel like I've had a plan all along, that I was quite comfortable with, it was still a bit of a shock to the system. And, I had to, give myself a bit of a kick up the backside and say, listen, you've prepared yourself. Like, don't get frazzled. Don't get, rattled by the kids' noise in the house, or things not going to plan, and living in a house that's being packed up at the moment. So things aren't in place. Like, all these little things, play a toll on your mind, and you start asking questions and stuff. But I think loose ends have helped me because I thought I would think about it more often and think about my next move, and so I feel I'm in a good place, even though it's been a tough 3-4 months. I think I'm in a good place, and it also helps me reassuring my wife and my family that things are going to be okay. I am the guy who's bringing in our finances every month, and she takes care of the family. That's my role in my relationship, and you don't want to, I guess, get to that stage where you can't do that, and it breaks you. So I think it's prepared me pretty well.
And Rob, just on what DTH said there about being proud and sort of that loose heads has helped him through tough times as well. So that must fill you with a lot of pride and loose heads with a lot of pride, because DTH speaks so positively about the impact loose heads has had on his life. Yeah,
absolutely. It's great to have someone like DTH on board. I think it was through the powers of LinkedIn that we got DTH on board initially. I, during my time at university, did a little bit of work with Rugby Canada. Unfortunately, I didn't get to go out there, so it's still on my long list of places to visit. But got given the chance to do a little bit of work remotely from a guy called Neil McDougall. So there's an instant connection and link. So I got in touch with DTH and asked him if he'd like to get involved with loose heads right at the start. It's been a hell of a journey since then. Dave has mentioned it a few times on the podcast that, we've got a lot of things wrong since then, but we've now got a bit of direction and we're pushing an important message. And we really can't thank DTH enough for, one, his patience, and two, his support.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. And I'm sure there's a story you were telling us yesterday about when you were doing a bit of travelling and you bumped into a Glasgow fan and you mentioned that you've been doing a bit of work with DTH.
Yeah, so I knew how much of a legend DTH was at Glasgow. I was sat in a bar in Australia and a cyclone had hit, and the only thing you could do was sit in a bar and drink. So I was talking about loose heads with a Glasgow season ticket holder and mentioned DTH, and he lost his mind. He completely lost his mind. He couldn't believe it.
No.
And I was stuck in Airlie Beach for 3 or 4 days, and I kept bumping into him, and he kept bringing it up. But that's when I realised, I knew he was a hero, but that's when I realised he really is, a man of the people up there in Glasgow.
No, thanks.
And you're obviously kindly giving up your time to speak to us today, DTH. But I noticed, obviously, during the World Cup that you were able to show your support for loose heads as well. And I know the loose head stash made it all its way to Japan. So was it important for you to take that with you? But also, I think it was Mental Health Day around the time of the World Cup. So important to show your support even during such a busy time for you at the World Cup.
Yeah, I think it's all about platforms and using, the platforms we get in rugby, and why not use the World Cup stage, the biggest stage of rugby. So I was in Kobe, I think, at the time when I did mine, and it's great to be able to do it and send it in, and people know I'm coming from all the way from Japan with the message. So it's about spreading the word as much as we can. I think the more people we touch, in rugby, and especially obviously the UK is well populated now with loose heads ambassadors, and everyone speaks about it, and everyone each club has almost got someone affiliated to it, and or has known someone who is affiliated to it, and so it's easy to spread the word there. But I think the great thing is to be able to use it in other countries, and make it people aware of there is people out there who want to speak about mental health, and breaking down that stigma is massive, and no better way to do it than a bunch of rugby players who are meant to be really tough and supposedly never show any emotions.
Yeah, and just finally on kind of the loose head side of things, DTH, and you mentioned there that rugby players are supposed to be tough and don't show any emotion. Yeah. And we've had a couple of players who have come on and talked about injuries and how much they affect their career. I know you've had your fair share of injuries, and some you've been able to bounce back from, and others have taken that little bit longer to recover. So how tough is that for players? Because we only see they get injured, they're in the treatment room, that's it. But there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, I think as a youngster, it's tougher to do as a youngster, because you don't realize the work that has to go in after you have surgery or whatever it might be. So I think my early days, I had a few, shoulder injuries and so on. And I've had my fair share of surgeries, 13 surgeries over my career. So but I think the older I get, or the older I got, the better I became at rehabbing, and the quicker I was able to come back. And hence why you touch on, making back for certain games. So obviously for the biggest one is that Ulster game, having a hand surgery, and coming back. I can't remember what it was, but like something like 8 weeks or 9 weeks or something later. But I was during that time, I went on holiday to Spain. Gregor said, just go get your mind off of it. But I took this little thing called the Osteotron with me that I had to put on my hand twice a day for 30 minutes, and it's helped promote bone growth. And they said that's the only chance you have of making it back for that game. So, I made sure I take my time every day to do it. And that's kind of the discipline you learn in rugby. And probably the biggest thing about rugby is the rules and the discipline you have to learn as a youngster. And that comes in play when you have injuries. So I've had a few times, and it was tough, but I think the later on in your stage, I would say probably the middle stage of your career, when you know how to do everything, it's easy. The later in your stage, you're like, whoa, time's ticking on. This could be my last game, whatever. So you don't never want to get injured, but you learn through the years, I guess.
And you touch on sort of learning as a young player, DTH, and I think probably for you had to learn quite a lot, considering sort of the move when you were 17 years old, if that's right in saying. Obviously you were born and raised in South Africa, but then moved to Canada in 2003. So what was that like for moving to a different culture and a different continent at that stage of your life? Because it is a very important stage of your life.
Yeah. You know what? It's actually 2 days ago. Now it kind of brings back memories to me. And so obviously we've been in Glasgow now for 11 years, and my wife had to actually say bye to Ryan Wilson's wife 2 days ago when she went down south. She's going to go home for the summer. So and they're best friends, have been best friends for the whole 11 years. When we are away on tours, they're spending time together. They brought up the kids together, all these kind of things. And that kind of brings back those memories of when I was 17, how hard it was to pack up and leave somewhere what you absolutely loved. So it was quite the shock to the system. But going back to my experience, I left at 17. I was playing high school rugby. I thought, this is the best thing ever. And it was sad to leave, but at the same time, I was excited. It was kind of the first time I was going to be on an airplane at 17, flying to Canada. Anyways, I landed in Regina, Saskatchewan, is where we decided to go to on a Saturday, and they had a rugby tournament going on for 2 days that Saturday. So we literally, the airport's across the road from the rugby club, went straight to the rugby club because we knew my dad's old partner, he's a doctor, his son was playing there. So we went and watched the bag still in the car, went and watched them play. The coach found out that I'm South African and that I'm going to be just coming to school the following September, but this is in June. He's like, well, I know you can't come to school now, but on Sunday morning, I'll pick you up from the apartment that you guys rented. I'll sign you up to the school, and you can play for our team on Sunday. So I literally landed on a Saturday, played on the Sunday for the school called Dr. Martin Levoldis. And I was just immediately, welcome to a full team of players. I went straight into playing fly half of that day, so that was quite interesting. And then from there, I was connected to the rugby club. Was able to start training on the Tuesday, Thursday, and start playing the following Saturday. So I was straight away, the rugby connection just made me feel welcome being in Regina. Then I spent a couple of years there in high school, and went on to the club rugby in the Prairie Fire, which is their provincial sides. So it was a good time, and probably an easy transition for myself.
I was going to say, DTH, how quickly did rugby fall into your lap when you were over in Canada? Because I knew you were obviously very passionate about it in South Africa, and right in saying you tried to get to Newlands as much as you could as a family to watch the Springboks and club rugby over there. But it seemed pretty seamless as soon as you walked off the plane.
Yeah, no, it was probably the easiest transition was the rugby side of things. Making new friends was ultimately, the quickest thing to be done because it was through a rugby team. So that was a long summer though, because it's, we're there from June and their school doesn't start till September again. So long summer, at least I had those Tuesday, Thursdays that were filled with training rugby and playing on a Saturday, going small road trips to Saskatoon or Moose Jaw, all these little places. And so it was great to have that support network right away.
And obviously from your school, Rugby DTH, you kind of move into the Canadian Super League, if that's right in saying, and you play for James Bay Athletic as well in the British Columbia Premier League. And at that stage, did you feel like you did have ambitions to play rugby at a higher level, or were you just pretty similar to when you started playing for the school team, that you were just enjoying it at that time?
No, I was definitely, I wanted to play rugby to the top level I could. Like you said earlier, I spent a lot of time at Newlands watching Western Province, Stormers, Springboks play rugby, and I always wanted to be a professional rugby player. Then fast forward, I get to Regina, play, high school rugby, straight away start playing for the Prairie Fire, which is a Super League team back then.
Right.
And then at 18, I was playing for the men's side, playing for Regina Rogue, which is the club side there. So things kind of picked up pretty quickly. But at the same time, I then started playing American football in high school and absolutely loved it. Made all-star team for, I think, 2 or 3 different positions in my first year. Was a top touchdown scorer for the first year, and great. So it was grade 11. Then grade 12, we didn't have as good of a team, but still managed to get actually 4 scholarship offers to go to America and to different universities. So that kind of threw a little bump in the road and thinking, whoa, should I go for that or should I stick to rugby? Because then I started speaking to James Bay, like you said, and having to pack up after 2 years being in Regina, move to Victoria, British Columbia, and play for James Bay. And ultimately I was just like, I've been playing rugby since age 5 and I'm going to stick it out. So James Bay had a lot of good rugby players like Jared Barker and Bobby Ross and Jeff Williams, Morgan Williams, all these kind of guys, Pat Dunkley. These are all guys who played for Canada at the time. And I thought, well, it's probably a good place to go and develop my rugby if I want to take, my ambitions further. So got out to Victoria and became a carded athlete, which is like a government-funded athlete with an eye on being playing for the national team. And after 3 years of being in Canada, I was lucky enough to be selected to get my first cap against Barbados in 2006. You only have to be in a country actually for 9 months back then to actually play for their junior side. So while I was in Saskatchewan, I was doing my fitness tests and my strength scores and all these things to be sent into the under 18 coach at the time. But the year prior to that, the Canadian team, under 18 team, didn't do well enough that they didn't make the next stage for the following year. So their tournament was canceled. So then that day I found out about that. I called up the under 21 coach, his name guy called Tony Medina. I was like, listen, any chance I know I'm 18 or 17 maybe possibly, any chance I can try out for the under 21s team, going to Argentina at the time. And he said, I'm so sorry. I literally just last week made my final cuts and the team's filled. But obviously if there's more injuries, we could look at you. But I was an unknown player at the time. Nobody, really wanted to take a chance on me. So that never ended up happening. But when I was, 19, being in Victoria, I got the shot to, go out and play for the senior team, which is unbelievable.
Yeah, and I think as well, DTH, on that, you mentioned there that you're ringing under 21 coaches to see if you can get selection. So was your drive at that time to definitely represent Canada, even though growing up in South Africa was such a major part of your life?
Yeah, no. As soon as I moved to Canada, I knew that was going to be home. I knew the future is going to be for me to be there. My sister struggled a lot more than, and they're a bit younger than me than I did, but I just, not that I don't want to say I flourished, but I just felt that that was home for me. I never looked back. I miss my friends back home. I miss the culture back home, but I knew that ultimately, my future is brighter, and my future of my kids or my wife, wherever I'm going to meet her, that someday it's going to be in Canada, and I wanted to represent Canada. So then I had to, from moving to Victoria, I had to wait for that 3-year period before I can be qualified to play for Canada. I set my mind straight away on being Canadian.
And at the time, kind of when you were looking at playing for Canada, was that with a goal of using that to kind of take a step on and, you know, look at getting involved more in clubs, whether it be in Europe or Super Rugby, or, you know, was the focus purely on I just want to play for Canada at this stage?
Yeah, so actually early in 2006, I don't know if it was January, February, somewhere it was cold in the UK. I actually had a trial with Nottingham to go to them. So I was there for 2 weeks, and actually Glenn Delaney, now the coach of the Scarlets, he was the coach then. So I went over there for 2 weeks, had a trial. They did no game. I don't know if it was because of the weather or there was no games in the championship at that time, but they said, listen, they want to see me play. They've seen me train, but they want to see me play. So they actually put on a game, an inter-squad game, just to let me play. And sure enough, they were like, all right, well, we're happy about about what you can offer. We want to sign you on a contract. And while I was there, my dad called me, and so this Al Kadou kind of guy from Saskatchewan said, listen here, he's actually the guy, Carl Fix, this guy set it up with Glenn Delaney to go for trial. He said, listen, you can't actually accept this offer because you won't be able to qualify for Canada because you need to be in Canada for another 5 months or so. So then I had to say no to that offer. I had to get back to Canada to spend my 3-year term. So I was already looking to become, professional rugby player at that time. So then, just 2006 played Barbados, and at the end of the year, or June, I think it was. And then, 2007 was the World Cup. So things changed pretty quickly after that.
Yeah, and with that, DTH, obviously you mentioned the World Cup there. Was that sort of decision vindicated from you not to move to England at that time, stay in Canada, and then obviously get that reward for playing in the 2007 World Cup?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think you never know what the outcome would have been. If I qualified for Canada prior to that, maybe my career would have taken a different path. Who knows? But I'm happy I became Canadian. Happy I got my first cap, and then was able to go in a World Cup, which I was pretty much told I was going to get experience because they saw something in me to for the future. I was still young. There was a lot of good players ahead of me at the time, but they're like, listen, we're going to take you with as a youngster, myself and Nathan Hariyama, who's currently still playing sevens, and another guy called Nick Trenkel, who's also South African actually. They took us 20-year-olds with, and just said, "Here, come for the experience." But ultimately, like rugby goes, everything doesn't go according to plan, and the starting winger, Justin Mensah-Coker, got injured just before the World Cup, tore his hamstring, but they still took him on tour, and that kind of gave me a shot to start the first game and every game after that.
Quite the baptism of fire there, DTH, for it.
Yeah.
It's good. Sorry, go on, DTH.
No, all good.
As we'll come back on to obviously that your Canada career later on, but in terms of your club career, when you do move to Saracens, because I don't think many people knew you spent a bit of time with Saracens, was that decision made easier because you'd got Canada in the bag, that representation was secured, and then you were able to think, well, where's the next step in my club career? Yeah,
no, definitely. I think ultimately, you want to play for your country. I want to play for Canada at any stage I can, but ultimately it doesn't pay the bills. You would have to, like all my friends who were just carded athletes, they all still had other jobs, or parents that would help them with their rent and so on. So I knew that I had to start looking elsewhere, and I played in that 2007 World Cup, and we had a guy called Glenn Ella was our backs coach at the time. And he was good friends with Eddie Jones, who was just going to take over from Alan Gaffney at Saracens at the time. So Glenn got in touch with Eddie Jones saying, listen, you got to actually Saracens had an injury. Dan Scarborough was injured with a knee injury, and they needed a medical joker. So then those three kind of guys got in touch with each other, took me over. I was actually going to go traveling after the World Cup in France for 3 months, myself and my then girlfriend, but now wife. We were going to go traveling for 3 months, and we're 2 days into our travels in Biarritz, and the phone rings, and they're like, "You want to go to Saracens?" I was like, "Well, yeah, of course, but I don't have anything. I don't have anything here. I've got my tour backpack," and they're like, "Don't worry, just get there for I don't know when it was." So there we were, hopping onto the next train, going to Saracens for 2 months.
And obviously, you were at Saracens DTH, and I know you picked up a bit of a nasty injury when you were there as well. But how was that for you at the time? Because if I'm right in saying you were 20, maybe 21, so was that quite
20, yeah.
tough for you to take? As you say there, you sort of just left what was your travelling trip behind, dropped everything, you went to Saracens, and then unfortunately picked up a bit of an injury.
Yeah, it was a massive shock. To be fair, like I thought we trained at a high environment in Canada at that time. We didn't have the national program that we have now. It was nothing like back then. You know, we were training on fields that was empty at 6 o'clock in the morning just to get a field session in, and then going to a random gym and so on. So then being in a full-time setup with guys like Neil de Kock, who was a Western Province player, I admired back in the day, Brent Russell. It was just a few of the South African stars that were there, and I was like, whoa, like I'm training next to these guys. So yeah, it was a massive shock, but I absolutely loved it. They could have made some of the older guys like Richard Hill and Glenn Jackson, now referee. These guys made me, Kevin Sorrell, the coach at Saracens now, those guys made me feel so welcome at Saracens. I was 20 years old. These guys were kind of at the end of their careers. And I was living in a guy, Chris Chesney's house. So it was quite far away from where we trained. I can't remember where it was, but training quite far away. And so all these older guys, Richard Hill was picking me up every morning for trainings. And I just was like, wow, how nice is this? Like, it was amazing. But yeah, ultimately things didn't quite work out there. I was just young and a bit dumb. I missed training one day because I was like wet behind the ears. I had no idea how to get to training by myself if someone wasn't going to drive me. So I actually missed training one day. There was captain's run day for the guys who were playing, but I wasn't playing on the weekend. So I missed training, and Alan Gaffney went through me the next day. He was like, this is not mediocre rugby. You can't just not show up. And I was like, listen, I'm sorry, but I had no idea how to get there, and I had no money, nothing, I'm in the country I've just arrived in. I've never been to England really, other than the Nottingham thing for 2 weeks, and so I went into the Dubai Sevens and got injured there, and that was kind of the end of that stint. Yeah,
so from sort of South Africa to Canada to England and then to Scotland, DTH, another country to tick off the list, and obviously you joined Glasgow. I mean, how much did you sort of take from your learnings with Saracens into that move to the Warriors?
Well, I think I knew what to expect in terms of a training environment. No, there was about a year between the Saracens thing and Glasgow coming up, or maybe a bit more. That I actually, after my injury, I kind of quit rugby for about a year. I was done. The injury wasn't getting better. I was misdiagnosed with a fracture in my ankle, a compound fracture in my ankle, and these little pieces of bone was stuck in my ankle, and stopping it from moving correctly. And so I kind of gave up rugby, got a job at a liquor store, worked for 4 days at this liquor store, and then wanted to go on holiday, go to a wedding in Hawaii, and they wouldn't let me go. So I said, well, screw this, I'm out of here anyways then. So I left that job after 4 days. And so yeah, it was a bit of a time where I had to find myself, I guess. But yeah, I went out actually to where I got injured was in Dubai Sevens. And then the next time I went to Dubai was the Sevens World Cup in 2009. And that's where Sean Lenine, the coach of Glasgow, saw me. One of my buddies on the team, I was like, listen, do you guys have an agent you speak to? And they gave me a guy's number and called him up. And all of a sudden, after a week in Dubai, and after one game we played against Scotland in the seventh, our first game in the Sevens, and we actually beat them. The agent called us like, listen, I've got a trial with Glasgow for 2-week trial, and I've got 3 offers in the championship. I was like, what? I couldn't believe it. And I was like, but I knew that Kevin Tkachuk is a Canadian player who was at the Warriors at the time. I was like, I'm taking the trial. I'm going to try and back myself there. So came over here in April. of 2009 and came for 2 weeks, and we literally trained twice, I think, because it was during the Six Nations breaks and all these kind of things, and games wasn't on and so on. And Sean Lenine took me to this little, he's called it his coaching corner, and said, right, catch these 2 high balls, jumping up in the air for one of them, kick the ball back to me, pass 5 times off your left hand, 5 times on your right hand. He's like, yeah, I like what I see. And he made me the offer. I was like, oh, that was pretty easy. Then I packed up my stuff. I actually, when I came over with that trial, my club team back then in Victoria, James Bay, we were in the semi-final of the BC Rugby League, and I was to fly out the day of the semi-final. I was like, listen, guys, I can't play. They're like, you have to play, even if you just play half. So there I was playing a half a game. As soon as the whistle went, I sprinted off the field, went and had a shower, buddy waiting for me with a car to drop me to the airport and get me there. I just made the flight in time. And then I was, next thing I know, I'm in Glasgow and on the trial. And this, 11 years later, I'm still here.
So when you look back, DTH, when you lift the trophy in 2015 with Glasgow, do you kind of reflect on that, what seems to be a bit of a whirlwind period for you, with a bit of a smile on the face, saying it was all worth it?
You know what? Actually, now thinking about it, speaking about it, makes me think about it a bit more and laugh inside. You kind of forget about these stories until you actually get asked about it and dig deep and think about it. And yeah, it's been amazing. It's been an amazing journey. I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't, not a single thing. So I've enjoyed every moment of my, professional career. And I've made some decisions I probably regretted at the time, but it all just made me learn from it. And ultimately, I kind of finish in Europe at the moment where I wanted to finish, I guess.
And just on that Pro 12 success with Glasgow, I mean, looking at the starting 15 that day, there were some unbelievable names in the team, DTH. So what special memories do you have of that day? Because it was obviously one of the proudest moments in the club's history. Yeah.
You know what? It sounds maybe cocky if I say it, but that year, like, I just knew we were going to win it. Like, I've said it so many times. We were in the final the year before, lost against Leinster. And that first day we came back the following, the 2015 or 14-15 season, we had every morning with projector it's still ingrained in my head. It's just the projector of Leinster celebrating with the trophy in their hands. That was our screensaver to the projector that was up on the thing, and it said, we want to be the first Scottish side to win the title. And whenever we played that season, doesn't matter if we were down 20 points, I just knew that we'd come back and win. Now obviously we didn't win every game, but that's just the feeling I had. We were so confident. We had a lot of young guys who were had no fear. But then we all the older guys who just kept the cap on things. And everything was just ticking for us. That semi-final win against Ulster, which I obviously was lucky enough to score the try in. But that pass from Finn Russell was unbelievable. The way he picked the ball up off his shoelaces and then threw it over the top, and then kicking the corner conversion to take us ahead, from 5 meters out, is just unbelievable. So, everything was just lining up to be a perfect day in Belfast. And it was so special. Like, I actually watched the final back maybe a week ago, and just, I couldn't believe it. Like, some of the stuff I just forget about, the lineup. Even like we had our 2 starting centers were injured, so Richie Vernon was starting at outside center, who's a back rower, and Pete Hornist at 12. And prior to that was, a lot of time was Mark Bennett and Alex Dunbar playing the center. So there's these combinations, and switching the back row around. Ryan Wilson came on to the starting team. Rob Hardy came to the starting team. Like, they just switched the whole team around, or 3 guys in the forwards as well. So our captain, Al Kellogg, came off the bench, which, crazy. You never think that. So no, it was an unbelievable experience. And, it's days like that makes you really, hungry for another victory and another trophy. And you don't realize how addictive that feeling is until you actually win something.
Yeah, I saw Dave have a little bit of a smile to himself when you mentioned Finn Russell produces some magic, with Dave being the Scottish resident on this podcast. So and just to put you on the spot, DTH, a little bit, you mentioned that try you scored in the semi-final, and if I'm right, you scored in the final as well. Which one was your favourite? Straight to the point.
No, it's got to be the semi-final, probably the favourite of those two. I think the final one's obviously it's special to score in a final, but like the work was done by Leone. Like I kind of watched the video over. My body language was just horrendous actually, because he came around to the short side and then like was darting and like it's kind of stopped, and I was like, oh come on, just pass the ball, like thinking to myself. And all of a sudden the winger kind of, or there was a Keatley, I think, pinched in on him as well, like 3 guys going to him. I was like, oh wait a second, and then he was just like, oh, here you go, like a basketball pass over the top. I was like, oh, whoa, I'm in. And I just went for it. But luckily I was still behind him. I kind of gave up. I was like kind of ahead of him at the time. But I think the semifinal one was so special with, coming back from injury. I was on the bench. And yeah, we were down with, I think, 4 minutes left in the game or something like that. And picking up that pass, I was so scared catching that ball. I was like, just please catch this. This is normal ball coming to you, catch it, and then just get it down. So that was a special time, and the way the crowd erupted that night, and little things that stick to your mind. There's a couple of ladies in the stands. I saw older ladies that were supporters, and I couldn't watch the kick from that Finn did, and their biting on their nails. They couldn't even watch the kick going over. And then you just wait for the crowd to erupt. It was amazing.
Yeah, you got to touch on there as well that once you win one trophy, DTH, you want to win another one. I know the next Pro 12 title for you comes with Scarlets. But just before we get onto that success, we spoke to John Barkley on the podcast a few weeks ago about his move to Scarlets. But for you, what was that like leaving Glasgow? Because you mentioned before at the time, I think you were on 96 appearances for the club. So what was that like for you to make that decision, or have to make that decision to move to Wales?
Yeah, that was probably, I'd say that was the toughest time of my career. With the move there, because I didn't want to leave Glasgow at the time. I don't want to go too much detail, but my hand was a bit forced, and there was a lot of miscommunication at the time, and I just thought I'll just take the initiative here and look for something else and make the move, because ultimately we all negotiate deals, and you go back and forth, and I wasn't getting what I wanted, and I left here. And it wasn't a money move. It was nothing more than what I wanted to get here. But I just thought I'd make a point of it, because I just felt a bit pissed off, I think. And in the end, Gregor was quite upset as well. Then when I did tell him I left, and but yeah, we learned from it. Both parties learned from it, and so on. But if I didn't do that move, I wouldn't have had that second title. So I'm still happy I did it.
And it was a special team you were part of as well, DTH, because John speaks about sort of the talent that you had in that team, and how much winning that title meant to Scarlets and the people who support the club. So again, you must have really built up a really good connection with the club. Yeah,
that was a star-studded team. I think Jonathan Dave, the centers that they had to pick from was unbelievable. Jonathan Davies, Scott Williams, Hadley Parks. And that Patchell Flab. These are all unbelievable players. Johnny McNichol and so on, Steph Evans. So that team is full of guys with X factor. It was definitely a different style of winning the title, because I think we lost the first 3 games of that season. So started off, I came back from the World Cup, and the team had lost 3 games, and everyone's asking questions. This should be such a good team, but once everyone came back from the World Cup, the team really molded together and stuck together, and you got that victory, and twice again for me against Munster. So pretty special.
And it's clear you had 2 very successful years with the club, DTH, and then Newcastle is next up for you. I know you're sporting the Falcons hat today, but how does that time look back for you? Because from an outsider looking in, it seems that you were probably not given the game time you probably deserved. Is that fair?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I deserve, but I would have liked to have more of an opportunity. Right. I think, the players that was ahead of me, Nicky Gonova and Sonati, yes, those guys could walk into any team in the world. Like any team, I think will take those two guys. They've got X factor. They've got double X factor. Those guys, they can make things happen. So I knew there was going to be a battle to be able to get into that team, and then. But what I didn't realize, just the politics of the EQP thing, how much of an effect that would have. So I was never able to play European games, so that takes some games away. That also meant that those two guys who aren't EQP either, they were getting rested during EQP times, which meant that they played every Prem game. So they didn't ever had to get rested during the Prem time. So I literally just had to wait for someone to get injured and almost like hope for someone to get injured. But that's not the type of guy I am, and I felt myself getting negative, and that's when I decided, I need to have the conversation. I can't continue to do this. I need to make a move, and I was lucky enough. It's a bit of a tricky one because you can't legally not allowed to go and speak to other teams, so you have to ask permission and so on. And so I was lucky enough that Glasgow wanted me back. Asked Dean Richards to say, "Listen, can I speak to other clubs?" And he said, "Yes, go ahead." And then it's all worked out really well for me to be able to, after 8 months, come back up to Glasgow and enjoy being here again.
Yeah, you obviously went into detail at the top of the podcast, DTH, how much the club means to you, and I've seen you say that you've lived in Glasgow longer than you lived in Canada. So was it special for you to sort of break that 100 appearance record? 100 appearance milestone for the club, but also now be the top try scorer in the club's history as well, I believe.
Yeah, no, it was definitely something that was playing in the back of the mind. You want, we don't want to speak about accolades and things like that, but it's always nice to have that notch in the belt. 50 caps for your country or whatever it might be, but also getting to that centurion mark for a club is something special. You get a special place on the board at Glasgow, so I knew I wanted to come back for that. The funny thing is, and this is a bit of boasting here, but the final for the Scarlets game, I needed one try in that game to get to 50 Pro 14 tries. And I was thinking, obviously, this is me. I'm done. I'm going 3 years to Newcastle. I'm done at the Pro 14. So if you actually, when the try gets scored, when I scored the try, Jonathan Evans runs up to me and he shows me 5. He's like 50. He knew that, I was chasing that number. So it's quite a special seeing that video as well again. And but yeah, it's nice to get that 100 caps under the belt and just being able to add on to it for the next 2 years.
Yeah, we'll probably have Canadian fans now, DTH, screaming at the podcast saying, "Why haven't we asked DTH about Canada?" But we're going to come on to it now because I think you said you don't like personal accolades, but I've been reading a few articles. People do rate you so highly and arguably one of Canada's all-time greatest players, DTH. But let's take you back to sort of that first World Cup that we mentioned at the start with playing in 2007. I mean, what was that kind of experience like for you? As you said before, that you were kind of there for experience, but then you go on and play those pool matches.
Yeah, a lot of people have asked me this, especially in this last World Cup, because then, it's my 4th World Cup. They always say, think back to 2007. But honestly, I think I was so young and naive that I didn't take it in. Like, the things I remember are small things that's nonchalant kind of things. I don't remember much of the games. I think I was just too young and dumb about where I was and what I was doing. Obviously getting to my first World Cup is special, and singing the anthem was special because that, and hearing that, something that sticks to my head is the World and Union song. That always, brings special memories to me. But honestly, the memories are quite faded about my 2007 World Cup. I just didn't really take it in as a youngster. And but I do have a little CD disc with all the photos on it. So someday when I get back and I can sit back and relax and think about looking through these photos, and hopefully the memories will stream back.
Yeah, absolutely, DTH. And one of the things that obviously what we've noticed with your career with Canada is that you've always tried to gain that qualification automatically for the World Cup. And I know the last few attempts you've had to qualify away from the usual route. Have you felt pressure on the Canadian rugby team to take that next step? Because I know in 2019 it meant the world to you personally to get the club over the line, to the country, over the line to get to the World Cup.
Yeah, I think so. For every time we did qualify, so that the 2007 one, I wasn't really part of it. Actually, I played Barbados game. Sorry, I did play that. So that was quite an easy game to qualify. I don't remember if that was a repechage or not. But then for 2011 and 2015, we qualified through the Americas thing, which, at that time, Canadian rugby was doing well. And we were able to beat America. We're quite confident in beating them. Come to 2019, after that 2015 World Cup, America started taking off, developing better than us and doing more than us in terms of development. And we can't win a game against them from 2015 onwards. And so that, put us in that repechage thing. Now, I know there's in the rugby league thing, there's that $1 million game that they, played. No, I think that repechage for us was something like 10 million.
Really?
Over the span of the World Cup cycle, so if we don't make it, we collapse the whole Canadian system. It goes completely bust. So that was, that as a national team experience, that was the worst time of my career, is playing in that repechage. I think it was badly organized by World Rugby. It was played on one field, back-to-back games. Like, what professional, team would play back-to-back games? You don't even let your youngsters play on your field before a game. So then, let alone we're in Marseille, I think it is, and the weather, it was horrendous. So it was so wet. The pitch was like, it was like, there was that completely equalized the teams, which I think is actually unfair. You should be able to play to your full potential, but we went into those games with zero game plans. We had 3 moves: just strike off the line out, strike off the scrum, just hit up with our 12, and we just play same way. That's all we did, because then we felt that we could still score with that. So the pressure was just immense. Like, I was falling out with a coach and stuff during that time, because I was like, listen, this is ridiculous. We can't not go in with like a game plan. We should at least try strike plays. But he believed that we're a better team on paper, and with the guys we had there, that we should be able to play the most simple rugby and just stick to that simple rugby and still get over the line. So we only had ourselves to beat, really. That's kind of what his view on it was. And he was probably right. It took me a while to kind of realize that. But ultimately we got there and got it done. But it's not a nice experience.
And through those qualification methods, DTH, that you mentioned there, you do get the reward of playing in a World Cup. And just before we go on to 2019, I just want to go back to 2015, which obviously over in the UK. And you've mentioned one of the tries that you scored was a favourite. I think, was it against Italy at Ellen Road, if that's right in saying. And I remember when you scored at Milton Keynes against France as well. So are those memories something that you do look back on fondness, if 2007 is a bit hazy to remember at the time?
No, it's that try against Italy, I get reminded of that at least once or twice a month, I'd say. Canada Day yesterday, people were using that as one of their videos, to be Canadian and so on. And it is just one of my favorite tries of all time. And I just gutted about the game, the result that we had. We were, we played such good rugby. We were leading quite a bit. And my old mate, rewind back to 2007, Glenn Jackson, the fly half, was the touch judge in that game. He actually screwed us out of that game, I think, personally. He made a terrible call. You guys know Phil McKenzie. he made a terrible call saying Phil was out when we were going to score probably again or get at least 3 points, and Phil was about a meter away from the touchline. I don't know what he was looking at. But yeah, that changed kind of the game, the momentum of the game. They end up scoring and getting the win out of that. So you don't want to blame the refs, but I blame Glenn. But yeah, no, that was a special year in terms of personal, personal results that I was, the way I was playing, and but ultimately it was a complete fail for Canadian rugby, not winning a game. We led against Romania quite easily, quite from the start of the game, and then fell away. So it's probably one that will haunt me forever, is that World Cup.
Yeah, and you've been quite outspoken, DTH, about sort of Canada needing to take that next step and wanting to beat those sort of tier one nations and get that result in the World Cup. But you talked about your personal aspirations there. In 2019, obviously you're drawn in a pool with New Zealand and South Africa. And I mean, were those two games special for two different reasons?
Yeah, they're obviously the best teams in the world, those guys, and that's probably the best out of the Americas. That's probably the best pool to have gotten is to play in that one, because we would have had Namibia in our pool, which is one that we would have targeted to win, and then you still had to take the we tried to take the confidence out of the Italy performance of 2015 into that pool as well, but they completely thrashed us in our first game, and then against New Zealand, South Africa, you're not trying to kind of just keep the score to a moderate number, really, but you don't want to say that, really. But so those were tough, but for me it was really special to play against South Africa, which ultimately was my last game as well. Fitting, not fitting, I don't know. Yeah, that's another thing that's kind of brings you back to club rugby here. I'm not being able to finish off my career with Glasgow, but I wasn't able to finish my career off with Canada either.
Yeah, I was gonna come on to that, DTH, and obviously it's a tough way to finish things up. I mean, you've had a brilliant 13-year international career, it's right in saying 61 caps and 38 tries, if those stats are correct. But the way it ended in terms of the typhoon and what happened over in Japan, and obviously the bigger picture is a lot more important, which is shown by the way the Canada players reacted, because the clean-up efforts that we saw on ITV, the pictures that were being broadcasted back here were brilliant. But in terms of, for you personally, was there that small part of you that was frustrated and disappointed you didn't get to pull on the jersey for one final time?
Oh, 100%. I, to this day, I know I joked earlier with coming back to play for Canada again in the World Cup, but that's the one thing that, keeps coming back to me. It's just like, I was not able to end on my terms. And I know everyone doesn't get to, because you fall out of selection or you get injured or something like that. So I shouldn't complain about it, but you are a bit selfish in that way, that you want to finish on your own terms. And I was absolutely gutted. That's the one game I was really looking forward to. My family my parents were there for that game, and to be able to share that game with them would have been unbelievable. My brother was there as well with his girlfriend. So yeah, I was absolutely gutted waking up that morning. I remember waking up at 6 o'clock or 5:30 in the morning, and looked on Twitter straight away, and it was cancelled. And I just couldn't believe it. I thought this is some big April Fool's joke or something, but no, it wasn't. But in the end of the day, there's a lot of people who lost their lives in that time, and you need to think it's just a rugby game. It's there's people who needed help at that stage, and I know a lot of people say, why'd you guys go and do that? Is it just all for show and stuff? But that's a true Canadian way. Like, we're good people. We care about people. And as soon as that opportunity was presented to the leaders group, we jumped right at it and said, we want to do it. And we still made it optional. There's a lot of other guys who wanted to obviously deal with the news in different ways. And it was never going to be, made mandatory. So about half of the team went to it. Other half, dealt with it their own ways. They had family in town they wanted to see, and so on. So, I took the opportunity to go and also, get into the community and Kamaisi and see what the towns are like. But the devastation was just horrific. And but the pictures of the elderly that we helped, their their faces. You can tell they had pain in their eyes, but those guys, they couldn't stop smiling with, they just get on with it. They just knew that they need to get this job done, clear out the houses, carry out everything, mop it up, pick up the mud, whatever it took, they've gone through this before. So they knew what to do, but it was tough to see. And especially like the elder ladies who were out there without the husband, they didn't have help, and they would try and do things that were way too heavy for them. So it was great to be there and to be able to help them.
Yeah, and just on Japan itself, DTH, I mean, we've only heard great stories about sort of player experience, and obviously what happened over there was really tough, and it was brilliant work that you guys did within Canada Rugby. But in terms of going over and playing in Japan, what was that kind of experience like? Because there was a lot of unknowns around it for a lot of people before the World Cup.
Yeah. If I didn't play in 4 World Cups, I would say is my favorite one. But, New Zealand was really special because they love rugby there. But honestly, Japan, the culture there is amazing. The people are amazing. The way they're structured and rules and all these things I loved it. Clean, people are respectful. The food is different, but good. You had to go in with an open mind and try different things, which was great. But I absolutely loved it. Japan's a great country. And they couldn't have made it any better. Like the setups of the fields, the teams, training venues, the makeshift gyms they put at every field that we were at, it was unbelievable. I was really taken back by how much work had gone into it and how much detail they paid attention to. So that was amazing.
And we mentioned it a couple of times on the podcast, DTH, but 4 World Cups for you. I think that puts you in a esteemed company with a few other players who have been able to do that. Is that something that I know you say you don't like talking about personal accolades, but is that something you hold in really high regard for yourself? Because to reach 4 World Cups is quite the feat.
Yeah, no, you have to. Obviously, you train a lot of years to be able to do it. Your timing has to be correct. You got to be young at the beginning and then be able to still play and make the team at an older age. So, and then injuries come into play with that. And I've had my fair share of injuries. So I think that, luck's been on my side during those years. And, I'm massively proud of what I've achieved with the Canadian jersey, and playing in 4 World Cups is, something I'll cherish forever, for sure.
And one of the things you said before that, 2007, you don't really remember. Please tell me if this is wrong, but we said yesterday you had your hair dyed blonde for 2007 and you had your hair dyed blonde for 2019. Was there a good reason behind that?
2011 and 2019.
There we go.
Blondes, yeah. But it's a funny story. So 2011, just prior to that, everyone was hating on Justin Bieber, big time hating on him. And I think he had bleach blonde hair at the time. We were sitting in Australia before the World Cup, and at Starbucks, and myself and Phil McKenzie and his brother Jamie we're like, let's do something. We got nothing to do today, day off. We're like, let's go dye our hair. So off we went, and Phil and I dyed our hair, bleached our hair, and we said, well, our team really hated Justin Bieber at the time, and we kept playing his music and just to kind of play, nice with the boys. And then we're like, if we score, we make hearts, a little heart, but I'll do one heart, he does the other heart on the field. And it kind of just took off. The media in New Zealand got a hold of it, and there's a few stories about it. And it was just a big old laugh, really, for me and him, an inside joke, but nobody really knew what it was all about. And I had a lot of fun with it. And then it was actually my wife's idea for this time around. She was like, why not? It's your last World Cup. Just bring it back, and put a poll out there to do it on Instagram. And people were like, yes, do it. And so, I went and did it, and it was good. I kept it for a while after as well here in Glasgow. So it was just good.
Rob, you'll have to get DTH to do another Loose Heads video singing Justin Bieber.
No way.
Yeah, I'm sure Cruzy will like that.
And just finally, DTH, on a bit more a serious question to finish. We mentioned before about the development of Canadian rugby, and MLR has definitely been a a major step forward in terms of that. My colleague Joe Harvey at Talking Rugby Union is very much passionate about the game over in America and Canada. Do you think that that league is massively important if Canada are to take the next step and keep developing in the right direction?
Yes, 100%. I think that is our tool to success in North America, not just Canada. I want America to do well as well, and I want North America to do well, and pull in Uruguay into that as well, because a lot of their players is playing in the MLR. I think this is the third year. Obviously, was cut short, but the 5 games that they did play, the level has gone up through the roof. The players that they've brought in different teams, maybe some older guys, but they bring in experience, they bring in work rate, and they get the younger guys to learn off of them. I think that's great for the MLR, but I definitely think that's the tool that we need to be jumping on as Canadians to. At the moment, we only have Toronto that's in it, but we've got all our players that are in the national team are playing somewhere in the MLR, so at least they get 15 high quality games, whereas they used to play club rugby in BCRU, which is good, but it's not, can't step up from there to international rugby is what kills us in Canada. We can't expect guys to play from that level to international rugby. So I think it's a good starting point for the MLR, and I think it's going to grow year on year. And it's massively exciting the way it's all set up as well.
Absolutely. DTH. Well, it's been brilliant to go through your career review and talk with you about sort of your affiliation with Looseheads. But now we're going to go on to the next part of the podcast, which is your Mars 15. I'm fully expecting Justin Bieber to be on the shuttle towards Mars now. So I'll pass over to Mark for the section.
All right.
We have a collective term that we talk about quite a lot about when people just have rugbiness. And listening to that hour of DTH, he's just rugbiness, isn't it? You've got behind the bits that you tell us. I bet there's 100 stories that you can't tell us.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's brilliant. I could listen to it forever. But here we go. Here's the premise. The Martians have landed on Earth and challenged us Earthlings to a game of rugby to decide the future of civilization. We've lost the toss, so on Saturday, the shuttle leaves, and it takes 4 weeks to get to Mars, where we'll play. So this isn't necessarily a question about who's your dream team and all the rest of it, because they've got to be proper rugbiness people to survive 4 weeks with each other, plus the shuttle back, if they could remember it. There's 15 players. There's a manager, a coach, a water boy, and a kit man. But quite honestly, DTH's team, when I was a lad, Gareth Rees, who's about my age, was Canada's favourite son playing for Wasps in England. And who would have thought that he had that impact? He brought Canadian rugby here. DTH has kept that candle burning. So I think your World 15, your Mars team to play Mars away, is going to span the ages. So over to you.
Let's see. Right. So should I give my team I've picked as, right, I don't know what's happening in Mars. I don't know who these guys are that we're playing. So I'm going for ultimate toughness, guys who can throw a punch, because we might be playing old school rugby here. I've got a couple guys who are good at traveling, keep us busy, because it obviously, like you said, it takes 4 weeks to get there, was it? And I've got a smart guy who can, dissect things on the run, can change the game plan for us. So I'll start with my prop, number 1, Ollie Kebbel. Do you want me to give an explanation on each guy? Or
yeah,
what?
Please.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So Ollie Kebbel, I've got a lot of time for him. Obviously a teammate here in Glasgow. But I think for the party afterwards, he's my man. That's why I'm taking him. Pat MacArthur, old teammate of mine from Glasgow. Again, tough guy, but he's a good-looking front row. So, I don't know, the girls in Mars might be looking for a bigger guy. So he's the good-looking hooker for us. Then I'm bringing someone who everyone will be petrified of, and that is Rod Snow from Canada, who also played at the Dragons. Then my old mate Jeb Sinclair. Now, every team needs a dummy. He's the guy we're going to send in first if anything goes wrong in the field. He'll probably get knocked out, and then we'll bring in the enforcer, Jamie Cudmore, who's my two second rows. Yeah. Then
he can certainly throw a punch.
Yeah, exactly. Now, my ultimate team I did with Looseheads actually has a few of these boys in it. So my back row stays pretty much the same with Chauncey O'Toole and James Cubby Boy Davies. Yeah. I think two different spectrums. Chauncey will give us a bit more height in the lineouts. Also a guy who's just, relaxed on that 4-week trip we're taking. Cubby Tours is something he likes to organize, so he'll be a good guy for traveling there, come up with ideas to keep us busy. And then number 8, a guy who probably always starts things, doesn't always finish it, Ryan Wilson.
As he looks around this construction site.
Does that include roofs? Yeah.
He'll bring a few tools with him from the building site here, but obviously he's always a good time on the after party. Bringing a bit of X factor in my halfback pairing will be Nico Matawalu and Finn Russell. You can expect those guys can do anything from anywhere. Obviously, I'm in this team at 11. Number 12 was Josh Matavesi. Now, there's a long trip there. This guy brews his own beer. Not too bad of a rugby player, so I'm taking him for the good times there. My number 13 is Ben Lesage, Canadian center. Massive potential. Probably someone who's going to be playing in Europe one of these days as soon as someone takes a shot at him. But he's the brains behind the whole operation. I'll probably make him my captain just because he can think on his feet. He's a good defensive leader and so on. Jeff Hassler. I don't know if everyone's heard the story about Jeff. This guy's quit rugby at Harlequins just to go sailing and get his sailing license. So this guy, he knows how to party and keep us busy. And then you always have to bring someone, I guess, who can scare off people when they look at him. And that's when I'm bringing Stuart Hogg. That guy is so ugly when he brings his game face. So Hogg is a fullback, and he's not too bad of a rugby player. Now, again, my coach is Sean Maneen, my first Glasgow coach. Yeah. He does not mind a pint of Stella. So, and he doesn't care about guys fighting on the field, so he'll be perfect for that. So he'll be good for on the field and also afterwards. My kit man is actually Dougie Mills, Shizzle, we call him. Coco is also another nickname. He's our kit man here at Glasgow Warriors. The guy's 60 years old, maybe 65 years old. He's still more ripped than every single guy in our team. Like an 8-pack, he's a machine. But he kind of looks like Mini-Me from Austin Powers. So, or Peter Stringer. Actually, he's a double of Peter Stringer. So, yeah, he's a great guy to have on tour, and I've got a lot of time for him to spend time with him. Then my water boy and my manager is Jamie McKenzie, scrum half for Canada. The guy just likes to organize things, and so he'll be perfect to get us on the right hotels, right setup over there. And then the water boy would probably be assistant manager is Nick Frisbee, well, he was Glasgow scrum half, Australian scrum half. That guy loves to party, and but it's a bit of a joke. He ran water for us this year, pretty much every game, because he was never able to get picked with Ali Price and George Horn. So he ran water, so he must be good at bringing on the messages. So that's my ultimate Mars team.
You're the second person to have picked Cubby Boy at 7.
Really? Yeah, no, he's a good time.
Yeah,
he's a good time. Like the guy just knows how to organize parties and stuff, and that's something he wants to do. And he's a very good rugby player too.
Brilliant! I love it.
We'll have to clip up that bit about Stuart Hogg and send it to him. See what he comes back with.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
That's fine. Green light from DTH.
His hairline hasn't really improved things, Rob. No, I'm just joking. I'm joking. Really joking, Stuart.
Oh, brilliant team, DTH. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you this afternoon. All the best with everything going forward, DTH. We do hope we see you on the pitch again and scoring tries for fun as always. So DTH, thanks very much for giving us your time this afternoon.
That's a pleasure, guys. Thank you so much.
And as always, massive thanks to Mark, Rob and Dave for joining me today.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And Dave, as always, just to finish off with a bit of the website, I've seen some great pictures on Instagram this week of people in Loose Edge Stash. It seems to be going well at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. Get yourselves over to looseedge.co.uk. If you enter code POD at checkout, it'll get you 10% off. Make sure you tag us in your photos and we'll give them a share.
Great stuff. And Rob, just finally, just to put you on the spot quickly, I know the Loose Heads guys you guys have introduced a new ambassador this week, Abby Burton, who's obviously part of the England 7 side. I mean, is it great to have her on board alongside obviously Sydney Grayson, who we featured a few weeks ago?
Yeah, it's great to have her on board. She got in touch with us as well, so it's another one that she's very passionate about mental health and body positivity, body image positivity. So yeah, it's great to have her on board.
Brilliant. Well, massive thanks again to DTH and to Dave, Mark and Rob. That's been another Loose Heads podcast in association with Talking Rugby Union.